Let's look at a real world example for our multi-dimensional arrays. Let's say I know how many students I have, and I know how many tests I want to collect and get an average for. What I can do is I can let my multi-dimensional array set this up to where we're able to store the information and then calculate it out. So in this instance, I actually need two arrays. We're going to go dim student name as string, so we can store that, and then dim student score, and we'll set this up generically right now as double. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have to know or be able to enter later how many students I have and how many scores I want to keep. So in this instance, I'm going to say I have 5 scores. Nah, that's too big. Let's go 3. 3 students, I should say. And each one's going to take, what do you want to say, 3 tests, 3 or 4 tests? We'll do 3. So we're going to cut that off at 2. And this front number has to match as far as our array is concerned. So it's going to be another 2 by 2 situation here. Okay? And I'm going to guess that this is going to be 2 then too. So what we need to account for now with this is collecting our student's name and then handling the correct information. So we're also going to go ahead then and do a dim student average and make that 2 as well as double. So it'll write the correct answer to this array. So we can do this all in pretty much one for loop. Although we're going to do a second for loop for the final printout process. Here with this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say for row equals 0 to, we're going to let student score, because every other array is going to work within student score. But we're going to let student score control our loops because we do need to write to both pieces of information. So for row equals 0 to student score, dot get upper bound, and that's going to be the row, so we'll keep it at 0. The reason it's airing out is it's not inside a button, so we'll bring the button back and place that in there. There we go. There we go. And then we're going to also bring in our column. Student score dot get upper bound of 1. Haha. Okay. So inside the first process, we only need to ask the student's name once. So we're going to go ahead and put that in between the row and the column for loop. So student name of row equals, because remember, we can, well, you may not remember, this is the first time you're going to see that we can control multiple arrays using the same 2 for loops. So this is huge. So student name.row equals input box. It's going to say enter student's name. So whatever we put in there is going to belong to that. Then inside here we're going to do another input box. So we're going to say that our student score array of row and column equals whatever the input box says, and we're going to go with enter score for, and we can actually take the information from the previous entry and use it already. So we're going to say student name of row. Okay, and it's going to repeat that. And what I think I will do here then is set up a separate for loops just so we can get used to the structure. So you can see the numbers get added up, and then a third one for printing out, which is not too bad at all. So for resetting up, we're going to go, or for adding up the numbers, and we could technically do this in all one for loop, but we're going to just spread it out a little bit. For row equals 0 to student score dot get upper bound of 0. For call equals 0 to student score dot get upper bound. And we need to make that of what number? Very good, of 1, not 10. Now, here we're going to take the information and just keep adding it up into the variable for student average. So we're going to say that student average of row, because we have to indicate where it's at in the array, plus equals the student score of row and column. So it's going to just keep adding it up and then place it into the correct array position. Because it's going to go across the columns and say, okay, I got this score, I got this score, I got this score. They'll belong to that spot. We move on. That score, that score, that score. Next spot, etc. And then here's a trick. We can just go through then, since what we need now only belongs to the student name and student average array, and use one for loop to print it out. So for I equals 0 to, we'll do student name dot, we'll do student name dot length minus 1. Works just as well. And we're going to say here that label1.text equals itself and the score for, and we'll say student name of I and put a couple dashes in between and student average of I. Because remember, I only represents a number. So what happened in row and column, we can use the exact same variable to make that happen and spread it out. And then we'll throw in control chars. Control chars dot new line. All right, let's test it out. This should work very well. And our name for student, we're going to go with Billy. I haven't talked to my friend Billy in a while. So you got a 65, then he got better, then he did okay. Another student, let's go with Josh. Josh hasn't done so hot, but he got better. Then we'll go with Lexi. She started off strong and hung in there okay. So there you have it. That is the sum of their total scores. So if I wanted to get the average there, what was the one thing I forgot to do mathematically to these three numbers? If you said divide, you're correct. So where I would add that division, and this is where I'll end the video, is after it adds it in here, then I would come out and say student average of row equals itself, and this is double, so divided by 3. And we could do that because we're still within the row for loop, so we can still call for it, and we can still work with the information. Here's a working example of how 2D arrays work.